When you think of a role-playing game, what comes to mind? Most would say Final Fantasy, others might say The Elder Scrolls. These iconic series have dominated the genre throughout their lifespan, whether it be in the land of the rising sun or abroad. Amongst all of these, there's always been one franchise lurking in the background, trying to be more innovative than the rest. And that franchise is the Tales series. Spanning 15 titles and multiple spin-offs over nearly 2 decades, these games have become a mainstay of Japanese popular culture and have only recently gained a foothold in the West. Popularized by their colorful characters, morally gray storytelling, and enticing combat system, the Tales series has come to compete with the very best of its category, even sometimes exceeding those it took inspiration from. But the one strange thing is that the franchise's origin has been hidden away from the world, lost to time. Who created this masterful series, and how did it get to this point? Was it truly Namco's franchise, or was it more complicated than that? And out of all this, what was the first tale? Our story begins with a single team, Wolf Team to be specific, formed in 1986 by Masahiro Akishino as an internal development team with Telenet Japan, a recent and budding video game publisher. Wolf Team was built to help expand Telenet's library of titles, as most of them were mediocre at best. Several months after their formation, Wolf Team had kickstarted Telenet's first successful series, Wallace. Wallace, the Phantasm soldier, releasing in 1986 for the MSX and PC-88 home computers, was yet another side-scrolling platformer, a popular genre at the time. However, its setup was unapologetically Japanese in its execution. Playing as Yuko Asao, a schoolgirl in 1980s Japan, players wield her sword Wallace to protect the 3 realms of Earth, Spirit, and Dreams from the demon lord Rogless, using classic platforming and sword-swinging gameplay. It was certainly simple for the time, but critics and fans took a liking to the game, turning Wallace into a franchise of its own, spawning 3 more sequels of varying value. With these victories on their shoulders, Akishino thought it was high time for Wolf Team to go independent, even though they had only just started. But Telenet, for now, was fine with this, and decided to let the team spread its wings. On its own now, with Telenet Japan's backing, Wolf Team continued to crank out hit after hit. There was Soul Feast, a classic space shoot-'em-up, Zan, their very own franchise, and a strategy game where you fought as 3 different armies, the Noble Yasha, Humanity, and the Demonic Horde, Arcus Odyssey, an isometric co-op hack-and-slash game that followed 4 heroes trying to thwart the return of an evil sorceress, and so much more. For years, they continuously pumped out game after game, trying to one-up themselves in the process. But, as with all businesses, mergers regularly happen. In 1990, Wolf Team was folded back into Telenet in anticipation of their merger with another team, Lasersoft. As time went on, Wolf Team stayed persistent with its own development, trying their hardest to make the very best video games that they could. Telenet liked their work so much that they decided to fold all of their teams into one singular unit, that being Wolf Team. To many, this would seem like a boon. More people working on their projects should equal a better product in the long run. Nevertheless, the man who created Wolf Team, Masahiro Akishino, and the director of many of their past projects, Masaki Uno, departed from the company with several other members in tow. The people who started the company had all but disappeared. However, throughout this debacle, one man still had a plan. A lowly programmer who had only just gotten his start at the company, Yoshiharu Gatanda, had been writing a novel of his own in his free time. This novel was called Tales of Phantasia and was unlike many fantasy stories of its time. It was told through 3 very different viewpoints. The first of these presents the story of Winona Pickford, a woman who meets Daos, a tragic figure and main antagonist of the story, as she follows him to learn his true intentions. The second viewpoint follows Rhea Scarlet, as she experiences the madness of Daos firsthand. In the final phase of the plot, the viewpoint would be picked up by Cress Albane, whose goal was to get revenge on Daus for the death of his parents and loved ones. Other than this, there were around 6 main protagonists planned with a setting that drew heavily from Norse mythology. It had the potential to become one of the most unique novels of its time, but as soon as Wolf Team and Telenet saw Gotanda's efforts, they just had to beg him to use it for their next project. Luckily enough, he agreed, and soon they began shopping around for a major publisher, as Telenet Japan's sales at the time had been quite meager. The team brought it to anyone who would listen, including several famous Japanese publishers such as the then squareless Enix. But they wouldn't even dare touch the project in fear of making more competition for themselves. So they had to look elsewhere for their creation. Only when they pitched the property to Namco did they finally find someone who took interest in their efforts. With the support of Namco behind their backs, they could rest comfortably and get to work. But who would lead and make up the team? Gotanda would of course write the scripts and program like he always had. However, a friend in the company who had been helping him with character designs, Yoshiaki Inagaki, would continue his work. On the other side of things, Joe Asanuma would direct their new effort. Masaki Norimoto was brought on as a lead designer, and Motoi Sakuruba, along with his team of composers, would make an unforgettable score. All was set to make Tale Phantasia a game for the ages, but there was a problem in their way: Namco itself. As soon as production began, Namco took a more hands-on approach and kept insisting on numerous edits to Gotanda's original story. Whole characters had to be scrapped. The original character designs were completely thrown out the window, and an entire chunk of crucial story was canned along with the 3 differing viewpoints. And to put the nail in the coffin, the name was changed to Tales of Phantasia. A simple change to be sure, but Namco's iron grip on the production was beginning to take its toll. After being delayed by a year due to all of the additions, people began to quit. Fed up with Namco's lack of understanding, director Joe Asanuma and lead designer Masaki Norimoto were let go around the same time, with many others following in their footsteps. Dissatisfied with the changes made to his work, Gotanda also soon left, not wanting to see his creation twisted and contorted any longer, as much as it already was. His passion for RPGs hadn't died, however, as soon after Asanuma and Norimoto left and found Tri-Ace, a company that would soon rival his original creation with their popular Star Ocean and Valkyrie Profile franchises. With the making of this fledgling studio, former developers from Wolf Team began to flock to it, hoping to work at a better place outside the watchful eyes of Namco. Only Motoi Sakuraba, the game's composer, stayed on, albeit in a freelancer role. Wolf Team had been ripped to shreds, with only tiny strands of its original being left intact. To keep Tales of Phantasia afloat after Asanuma's departure, they put Eiji Kikuchi in the director's seat, while hiring legendary Japanese manga artist Kosuke Fujishima to redesign Inagaki's characters from the ground up to replace their unique representations with designs that emulated the anime and manga mediums. Even without their original creators, the show, as they say, had to go on, eventually resulting in a release. Tales of Phantasia, releasing in 1995 on the Super Famicom, still resembled what Gotanda had envisioned somewhat. Taking place on the planet Azalea, the game starts off with 4 heroes fighting off the Sorcerer King Daus. Before they can defeat him, Daus uses magic to travel years into the future, where he meets his end by the warrior's descendants who are waiting for him 12 years later. 2 young men named Cress and Chester live a peaceful life in their village, free of any kind of war or conflict, until one day when a dark knight named Mars razes the village to the ground, in the name of Daus, hoping to set him free. Fueled by revenge, the two chase after Mars, meeting a young priestess named Mint along the way. Eventually, Daus breaks free of his prison, with no one being able to stop him. The only solution they see is to send Cress and Mint back in time to find a way to defeat the sorcerer once and for all. What follows is a time-hopping adventure from the past to the future, as Cress and his merry band try to fix Daus's misdoings and find out what he truly aims to do with the world. Tales of Phantasia proved to be its own unique undertaking. Its storytelling was dark, yet could prove to have plenty of levity to it when the time called. But what truly set it apart from the rest of its competitors were its characters, who at first seemed like stock archetypes that many others use, but had their own motivations, dreams, and other conflicts driving them forward. This was all thanks, in part, to the absolutely stellar writing of Gotanda and unparalleled design of Kosuke Fujishima that brought them to life. Tales of Phantasia played out to be an interesting addition to the RPG formula, although it was not only because of story, but also its gameplay. Using a never-before-seen system that blew many of its competitors out of the water, the Linear Motion Battle System, or LIMS, was unlike anything anyone had seen before. Taking inspiration from fighting games such as Street Fighter, the Linear Motion Battle System smashed the fighting and RPG genres into one unique concoction. Fights are played out on a two-dimensional terrain with enemies and your party members moving in real time. To attack, you can swing your sword at foes or use arts, special techniques that use up your TP or technical points, this game's replacement for MP. As the only playable character is Cress, the main protagonist, your allies operate on their own and are the general spellcasters of the group. Alongside this never-before-seen battle system came graphics that pushed the Super Famicom to its uttermost limits due to its expansive world and use of 3D effects. Tales of Phantasia was also one of the very few titles on the system to even have voice acting or voice actors, but since they could only fit so much in the cartridge, they could only have ever so much of it. But it was big enough that they could fit the console's first vocal song, The Dream Will Never Die, making the intro all the more memorable. With a revolutionary combat system, story, and innumerable other things, Tales of Phantasia seemed set for success, but reality was much harsher than that on the fledgling franchise. Not only did it barely make the production worth it after selling over 400,000 copies, but it also struggled to find a critical foothold, receiving a thrashing that you wouldn't expect on its surface. In all honesty, comparing it to many other Namco properties such as Pac-Man or Soul Edge, Tales of Phantasia seemed like a losing bet. Its development was divisive throughout its entire lifespan. At first, it was a simple project, a single solitary vision from a creator who wished to craft a fantasy world of his own that told a story unlike many of the day. However, the world is a cruel one that, at times, crushes dreams with abandon, and Gotanda's tale was just another one of its victims. Was it corporate greed? Was it an uncompromising creator? Or was it just something in the middle of the two? No one could tell you that for sure. The story of Namco's deconstruction of the beginning of this unending tale has been lost to time, potentially forever. However, even in the darkest of times, some light can shine in, and the finalized version of Tales of Phantasia was no different. A landmark game that pushed the RPG genre forth in new and exciting directions, and helped create the Star Ocean and Valkyria Profile franchises to boot. The series' fascinating combination of role-playing mechanics and fighting game staples made for an interesting concoction unlike anything anyone had seen before. Its revelations and inner dilemmas challenged players as well, asking whether or not their actions were truly justified. But above it all, amongst the clutter, there was something here, something that hadn't quite been seen before. It seemed their destiny was to capitalize on this fact. So, do you think Namco stole this series from its original creator? Would it have been better if Gitanda got his way? Let us know your thoughts down below, and if you would like to support this series more, click here and go to the Chronicles channel. Patreon support is also open and welcome. Link to that in the description. And until next time, never stop using your noggin, and make sure to continue that thirst for knowledge.